Now it's time for us to connect up the monster's attack logic. Let's go back into our battle window. We're going to need to modify the onAction method. We're going to make it a little bit more generic. This way we can call it from either the player or the monster. To do this, let's go and replace the value of int ID that gets passed into onAction. And now let's pass in a generic battle action, and we'll call this action. And we'll also pass in an actor, and we'll call this target 1, and an actor, and we'll call this target 2. Next, we can delete the variable where we choose the action from the actions array, since we're already passing this in. And now let's further make this more generic by replacing the player with target 1 and the monster with target 2. Now we're going to need new methods for when the monster and the player attack. Below this, let's create a new public method with a return type of void, and we're going to call this onPlayerAction. And here we'll pass in an int ID, just like we did previously. Next, we'll create a new variable for the action, and we'll set it equal to actions, and in this array we'll use ID to find the correct index. Then we'll simply call onAction. Here we'll pass in the action, and we'll pass in the player as target 1, and the monster as target 2. Now below this, let's go ahead and create a new public method with a return type of void, and we're going to call this onMonsterAction. Here, we're going to create a new variable called action, and we're going to set it to the actions array, but we'll just use index 0 so that the monster can only attack back. Now let's call onAction, and here we'll pass in the action, and this time we'll do monster as target 1 and player as target 2. Now we need to keep track of who's attacking first. So let's scroll up to the top of our code, and let's create a new public field with a type Boolean, and we'll call this next action player. And we'll set this to true so that the player always attacks first. And now let's go back to our onPlayerAction. At the end of this, let's go ahead and set the next action player to equal false. And for the monster, we're going to set the next action player to equal true. Now let's scroll down to where we called next action. And let's go ahead and wrap this in a new condition. First, we'll test to see if the next action player value is true. If it is, we'll simply show the action group so that the player can perform an action. In the else condition, if the player isn't about to have an action, we're going to call onMonsterAction instead. Now let's save this and go back into Unity. Now the one thing we're going to need to do is rewire the attack and run buttons inside of our battle window. Let's look for the attack button, scroll down, and you'll see we now have a missing battle window action. Let's choose from the dropdown the battle window, and we're going to select onPlayerAction and pass in 0 as the ID just like we did before. Let's do the same thing for run. Now let's save our changes and run the game. If we go into the game and start the battle, and now you'll see for every time that the player attacks the monster attacks back.